Right, golfers, today's golf lesson is very, what lots of people would call basic. Some might even call it like a simple golf lesson. But I'm going to share with you today something that I get asked so often from golfers, so making it not basic or simple, hence I get asked about it so much. And as you delve deeper down into how the iron actually sits on the ground, so toe up, heel up, level, whatever you do with it, it really starts becoming quite an in-depth and more of a complex golf lesson that lots of you need. So when it comes to trying to get your irons to sit on the ground what we would call correctly or in a functional way, we need you thinking about this in a few different ways, because this is a real golf lesson essential, and you can do this with other clubs, and if you want me to do this with other clubs, we'll do it. But this is predominantly your iron shots. You could use it for hybrids as well. You can use it for all clubs, but this is going to be much more for these kids to kick us off. So let's go with a rule of thumb to start. Give you a gauge to start from. The most functional position, the position you'd try and get most golfers in who are beginning, you know, trying to make them as consistent as possible, those kind of ideas. So what I want you to do is take your grip, take your stance, so your golf stance, and then just simply pick the club up so it's around parallel to the ground and you're quite upright in your body. Now lots of you would have heard of this idea. Now from here you're going to bend forward from your waist, so from your belt buckle, and place that club on the ground. This is going to put nice sets into your, around your pelvis area, a little bit of knee flex just to relax in. And what's going to happen now is that club for me, because this iron is fit for me, so meaning the length of the club is realistic for what I need for where I want to stand. For lots of you, that's something you will need to consider if you are shorter than the average bear, taller than the average bear, arms longer than the average bear, arms shorter than the average T-Rex, like good old Lou Stagner in the Hack It Out Golf podcast with his T-Rex arms. So having clubs that are somewhere made for you, this is where the advantages come in. But you can still apply these ideas if you haven't got that. So this rule of thumb, this basic idea is going to allow you to understand how far away to stand from the ball, what kind of tilts to put in, and it's going to give you an indication of how the club should sit on the ground as possibly your stock standard shot. And for me, and most golfers I would teach who would have clubs somewhere around kind of the right ideas for them, that's going to place the toe, this being the toe, this being the heel, a fraction in the air. So not perfectly flat on the ground, not toe down, and not toe way up in the air. The toe is going to be a fraction in the air. For your eyes, it will look, as you look down at the club, you know, so as I look down in gaming position, it might look relatively flat on the ground. And I do this a little bit seamlessly with my stance. So I actually stand feet together, ball position next, then do the drop of my pelvis to get the club on the ground. And this has put me in a functional position that's going to allow me to hit a shot, that's going to allow me to get the club going through the turf in a sensible way to try and keep control of the club face and hopefully hit somewhere near a neutral golf shot. Because here's why this is important, for a few reasons. One, the way the club sits, so the more toe end up it gets or toe end down it gets, subject to how much loft it's got, so the more loft this has more effect, the more the club will point left. And if I toe end it down, the more it will point right. So if I want the point of the club somewhere where I want the ball to start, that lie has to be worked in to try and help me deliver a dynamic, a light impact that somewhere represents that. So let's just do that again, because it's so important we understand that. If I have the handle low and the toe up, even though the leading edge of the club, so the straight line, so this bit, the bit you should be aiming with, this bottom line, if that is pointing at a right angle to the line I want to hit the ball along, but the toe is in the air and the club has loft, yes, that loft will be pointing left. But to you, you'll look down and think, where's that gone left? That's pointing straight. And vice versa. If you've got loft, this is harder, but as you get straight faced in your irons, as you toe end up, it's starting to point the loft certainly further right of where it is if it's neutral or toe ended up. So finding your consistent, gameable, usable position, this being the basic blueprint for that, is going to be great for allowing you to actually aim the face, then in turn aim the rest of my body. Now when it comes to what happens up at this end, so the hold end, the grip end, the bit you're holding on to in relationship to the lie, it has a huge effect as well, because I want you to watch this. This is where my club goes through my lead hand on my gloves. This is a pretty neutral textbook position for my grip to be established in lead hand. Now, if I have the toe end of the club down too much, which is certainly common with newer golfers, they get the club very flat to the handle quite high. Now when I put my hand on the club, this is establishing a hold that is very, very different for two reasons. One, it makes my hold not in relationship to the face, so it makes it what we call weak, which is going to encourage open faces. This is very common. The second thing it does, because the club was so upright at address, now putting the club up here through my hand, it naturally puts my club up through that part of my hand. Unless, when you're setting up with the handle really high, you really contort that lead hand, then from there you're going to get into these kind of cricket positions, which I do see from cricket players, or you're then going to start having to adjust your lie to fit your grip. So if you can do them in sync together, and this is again why this drill works so well, because if you put the club out at this point where it's somewhere parallel to the ground, if you just point your fingers down to the floor in front of you and wrap around, you'll get the club in a much better place in your palm, opposed to if I put it at this angle, which is basically where it is when it's down on the ground. This is now just putting that club right through the middle of my palm, unless, God, look at the angle I have to get into to do that. That's really tough. So the pattern we tend to see from golfers, they get low handles, generally quite strong grips, and they suffer from kind of hook shots, pulls, over curvature to the left. If they're very high with the handle, naturally, they're much weaker in their hold, weaker club face positions, weaker deliveries. We get high poppers off to the right, driver becomes almost impossible. It leads to so many problems. So you can see how the club sits on the ground is going to reflect how you hold the club. Then in turn, that's now going to reflect how you control the face, which then might reflect how you swing the club, the direction you swing on. So it just keeps kind of working its way out into this ball of inconsistency. No one wants a ball of inconsistency. So you stand in position, toe very fractionally in the air. It will look quite flat from this position. Take your stance, or you could try and work out your gauge of distance from the ball up in the air, bending forward from the waist, letting everything just come down naturally, so don't stretch your arms down. This is going to give you your nice functional position that will allow you to start building some much better foundations for your golf swing. And foundations is interesting because this is something when you get golfers who haven't played and then they come for a lesson after, say, they take golf up, go and play with their mates for 2 years, get frustrated, come for a lesson. It's always these things that we're unpicking. It's always having to unpick. Okay, you got the club up, right, that goes through your hands in a very awkward way, which is why you can't control the club face. How high you have the handle is going to dictate how you stand, which then will also dictate how you turn. How low, the same thing. It's all going to dictate how much tilts and turns you put in, what positions you can get into. It just literally does roll out and affect every part of what you do to try and hit target. So if we establish that goal now of having the toe very fractionally in the air, which is going to lead to better grips, better setups, that's your benchmark, that's a good place. Now you are going to see different variations on this. And to be honest with you, when I play golf, I use variations on this as well. So I want you to start practicing the variations, to start understanding where your neutral, your middle, your safe ground, your functional ground is. So on this shot now, for whatever reason, I want to start it out to the right and draw it back. There might be an obstacle in my way. It might be just the way I see the shot. The wind's off the right and I want to start it out there, draw it a bit with the wind, whatever it is. So it could be going around an obstacle and it could be just shaping the ball. I'm going to use my lie, so how the club sits on the ground, to help me. Because remember what happens, if I point the face off towards the right hand side of the bunker with my standard lie, now if I just lower my hands a little bit, this allows me to get a stronger grip, so more turned over to my right as I look down. I'm going to use my feet to aim off to the right, so I now know this face is going to be closed hopefully to the path I swing along. And by having my handle lower, it makes the feeling of having that extra rotation, getting that face to work for the draw, way easier, allowing me now to start the ball off to the right and turn it back into the middle left side of that green. Just hang on. I mean, it's just got loads of turn on that, and it was really easy from down there. I pointed the face right to start the ball there. I didn't want it to start quite as far right as I pointed it, so I then lowered the handle. This is going to allow me to feel that I can rotate the club better. It allowed me to get my stronger grip, which again allows me to get the face rotation to allow me to shape the ball. I use the lie of the club with other things to control how I hit that golf shot. Now I want to hit this ball at that flag, but I want it to move to the right. There's a lake on the left, there's something on the left, or there's a bush in front of me that I just need to move it around again. I want this ball to not draw, I want it to stay straight to cut. Now what I'm going to do is get the toe a little bit more in the ground. I'm going to get my hands higher. This encourages that slightly weaker grip where everything's now more over to the left. Having the hands higher encourages for me a steeper feeling of a golf swing and a more held off golf swing. So low handle makes me feel like I'm going to roll. High handle makes me feel like I'm going to putt, hold off, leave the face open to a par. See where this is going? I'm building in a fade from the foundations of how I lay that club on the ground. I'm using this simple basic golf swing lesson that lots of people ask me about. You can use the standard bit and get that working, but I'm actually using this basic lesson as an accomplished player to help me hit better shots on the golf course. So I'm going to stand taller, accept the weaker grip from this higher handle. I'm going to accept the feeling of this club feeling like it's coming across my body and steeper. I'm going to aim accordingly, so up the left. And now I've basically got a worked in fade. That is a beautiful, simple little, that is straight at it. Simplistic little cut. I didn't have to feel particularly like I started in a standard position and went this way to cut and this way to hook. I let the setup, how the club sits on the ground, actually start to dictate how I'm going to move the club, how I'm going to hold, where I'm going to aim then to adjust for the shape that's being put in. I'm using the lie of the club as a skill. I'm using it as a skill for consistency, a stock standard, a basic to start from. I'm then using it as a skill to shape the ball and change the way I swing. So look, for you applying this, hopefully lots of you have already clicked on this, but if you haven't, this is then how you apply it. You're the golfer that's out there frustrated, hitting weak high shots off to the right with your iron, say. You're someone who now should be really making sure this grip's in the right position, really making sure you're getting that toe fractionally in the air. So to you, you might be going from here that you look down and looks flat to actually down here, adjusting posture, which will push that club lower in your grip, allowing you now to use that face differently. If you're someone who absolutely overdraws, I get loads of good golfers who come for lessons, big pattern with a better player, you know, your county players, your scratch handicapper amateurs and what have you, and pros who can overshape to the left. They are way more kind of down here than they ever are up here. General pattern for, if we're going to put you all in buckets, I'm going to get more of you in the appropriate bucket if I use this generalization. Good players tend to be a bit more down here. Weaker players, lesser handicap golfers, not, you know, new golfers, they're generally standing up here because they don't feel comfortable sticking their bum out, bending over, so they kind of just stand upright. They're the patterns that we see. So when I get a good player, you see this strong grip, handle low, you just slightly move their handle up, just bring their posture up. And yet they stand there and say things like, cool, from there, I can't hit it from there. Like to them, they feel like they're stood up like this because little adjustments in your posture will feel quite different, quite big. And then they start hitting some shots and they're like, oh my word, look how neutral that ball flight is. Like, look how straight it is. And I think, yeah, like you've been putting yourself in a position that makes golf super, super hard. Your golf stance affects so much. The way you set that club up affects so much. If you want to improve the strike of your irons a bit more, this video's really going to help you out. Move these ideas, get that handicap coming even lower.